Before Denise Crosby ever stepped onto the bridge of the Enterprise, she was shown a version of Tasha Yar that would never actually exist. That invisible promise was what eventually destroyed everything. Now, at 67, she's finally opening up about why she walked away from guaranteed fame and fortune on Star Trek: The Next Generation. The truth behind her shocking exit also exposes a side of Hollywood most actors are too afraid to speak about. Stick with us till the end, because what forced her out will completely change the way you see the entertainment industry. Let's begin with the moment that sealed her exit. The audition that promised everything. The scene that convinced Denise Crosby to take on Tasha Yar wasn't supposed to vanish, but it did. And when it disappeared, it took her entire future on Star Trek with it. In 1987, Denise walked into her audition expecting to play a character with depth, authority, and emotional range. And the scene she read seemed to promise just that. It paired Tasha Yar with counselor Deanna Troi in a quiet, intimate exchange focused entirely on character rather than spectacle. This wasn't just unusual for Star Trek. It was revolutionary for 1987 sci-fi TV, where women usually only played communications officers or love interests. The scene also hinted at Tasha's past on Akana for the violent colony she survived, the rape gangs, and the trauma that shaped her fears and trust issues. It suggested storylines exploring trauma, recovery, and the cost of leadership. In that moment, Tasha wasn't just a security officer. She was human, and the connection between the two women hinted at relationships with layers that could grow over time. Denise threw herself into that scene because it felt like a promise. It mirrored everything she thought Tasha Yar would be week after week. Years later, on the Seventh Rule podcast in 2023, she said that audition had clearly set her expectations. That single scene made her believe she was stepping into a role with real substance. She got the part, and the excitement was real. Now a series regular in a franchise with history, she was playing a character forged in a brutal upbringing on a violent, collapsed colony. Denise believed that background would shape Tasha's instincts, leadership, and choices, and that audiences would eventually see how someone molded by chaos could become Starfleet's chief of security. Then production started, and the promise quietly disappeared. That audition scene was cut completely. It never aired, never resurfaced, and never influenced the character viewers met on screen. Script by script, the gap grew between the role she thought she had taken and the role she was actually playing. That gap, formed quietly and early, soon became impossible to ignore. Once the foundation vanished, everything Denise expected for her future on Star Trek began to unravel. Written out while the camera kept rolling. Even as Denise Crosby continued to be paid like a series regular, about $15,000 per episode, showing up to set every day, the script she received kept shrinking. By the time she realized what was happening, it was already too late to stop it. As season 1 unfolded, Tasha's role kept narrowing. She stayed at the tactical station, delivering routine updates, while her instincts, authority, and the trauma that could have fueled real leadership were ignored. The warning signs didn't come through confrontation. They came in thinner and thinner scripts each week. Tasha Yar's Akana for backstory, which had shaped her character, only appeared briefly and then vanished, never fully explored. Meanwhile, other characters got rich storylines. Brent Spiner's Data explored identity and emotion. Michael Dorn's Worf tackled Klingon honor and internal struggles. And supporting cast members found moments to shine. Denise spent more time alone in her trailer, rehearsing ideas that never made it to the screen, while her castmates unpacked scripts filled with emotional depth. Episodes like The Naked Now and Code of Honor hinted at potential, but those sparks quickly died, leaving her presence feeling hollow and unfulfilled. Every week emphasized how little room she had to contribute. Excitement about being part of the show slowly turned into frustration. By mid-season, it was undeniable. Showing up no longer felt like progress. It felt like waiting for permission that would never come. That realization pressed on her daily, until one stark question crystallized in her mind. How long could she endure this? And when the answer came, it meant confronting the one person who could change everything, facing the truth about her role, and forcing the future of Tasha Yar into the open. The meeting that ended Tasha Yar. the choice that ultimately removed Denise Crosby from Star Trek. The Next Generation wasn't made in a writer's room or on a call sheet. It happened behind closed doors, in a private conversation that most actors would never dare to start. By mid-season 1, Denise had reached a breaking point. Waiting felt worse than leaving. The isolation was routine, scripts weren't improving, and promises of deeper storylines kept getting pushed further away. Instead of hoping things would change, she went straight to Gene Roddenberry and asked to be released from the show. A bold move on a high-profile series still finding its footing. Years later, in a 2024 interview with IGN, Denise described that meeting as calm but emotionally heavy. There was no shouting, no drama. Gene listened. He told her he didn't want her to leave and insisted the show was still stabilizing, arguing that stronger material would come once the early chaos settled. From Gene's perspective, Tasha Yar still mattered. But for Denise, time was the real problem. She had already seen how slowly the writer's room adapted. She believed the creative culture, shaped by older, rigid thinking, wasn't ready to give women like her, Gates McFadden, or Marina Sirtis the layered storytelling they deserved. Waiting longer felt like agreeing to disappear quietly. That's when she drew a hard line. Looking at Gene, she said words that would define her career. "I am not willing to stay on the show as a decorative presence." She refused to be a token role when her character had been introduced with depth and purpose. Her honesty wasn't confrontational. It was a boundary. Gene respected that. Against standard contract practice, he let her leave without resistance, guilt, or retaliation. But before the meeting ended, he made one final suggestion, something that would shape how audiences remembered Tasha Yar forever. Instead of quietly writing her out, he proposed a bold move. Tasha would die suddenly, showing that no one on the Enterprise was safe. It would give the character impact and make the exit permanent. Agreeing to that death meant agreeing to something far more shocking than either of them imagined. What happened in Skin of Evil would haunt Star Trek fans for decades and prove exactly why Denise had to walk away. The death that was meant to warn everyone. Tasha Yar was standing one moment and dead the next, killed by a puddle of black oil with no warning, no heroics. Her sudden, brutal death in Skin of Evil wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate message meant to shock viewers and show that Gene Roddenberry was serious about making the Star Trek different. Once Denise was released from her contract, the production faced a choice that would define the show's early reputation: write Tasha out gently or do something far more unsettling. Roddenberry chose the latter. He wanted viewers to understand immediately and clearly that this new Star Trek would not protect its main characters just because they wore bridge uniforms. The result was Skin of Evil, a late season 1 episode that blindsided audiences. Tasha leads an away team to investigate a crash shuttle. There's no build-up, no warning. Without a fight or final stand, an entity called Armus lashes out and kills her instantly. The shock was intentional, but the audience reaction was fierce. Fans didn't see it as bold storytelling. They saw it as a waste. The irony ran deep. Tasha's death was supposed to prove that no one on the Enterprise was safe. Instead, the backlash was so strong that no main character would die meaninglessly for the next 6 seasons. Rather than raising stakes, her death taught writers to never take that risk again. A character introduced with a brutal past, elite survival skills, and command potential was erased by what felt like a random encounter. Denise didn't hide her disappointment. In later interviews, she admitted she had hoped for a darker, more physical exit, a final moment that reflected Tasha's history and strength. She wanted the character to fight, to struggle, to go out showing who she really was. Instead, her death mirrored the same problem that pushed her to leave. Tasha was never fully utilized, even at the end. Yet for Denise personally, the moment closed the chapter cleanly. The role was over. The waiting was over. So was the security of a steady paycheck and a franchise that would soon explode in popularity. She was walking away from that security with no backup plan, no guarantee of future work. In an industry where most actors struggle to land even a single guest spot, walking away should have felt like freedom. But as months turned into years, watching Star Trek, The Next Generation become exactly what she'd hoped it could be, Denise started wondering, had she made the biggest mistake of her career? The freedom that came with doubt. leaving Star Trek. The next generation was supposed to feel liberating, but the reality wasn't glamorous at all. Denise Crosby soon faced a harsh truth. Betting on yourself doesn't always pay off immediately, especially when you're watching your former castmates become household names. There was no instant reward for her decision, no clear validation that she had made the right choice, no flood of exciting offers, no fast track to stardom or leading roles in major films. Instead, Denise returned to hustling, taking smaller TV and movie roles that range from creatively satisfying to quickly forgotten. She appeared in episodes of Red Shoe Diaries, Tales from the Crypt, and The X-Files, as well as films like Pet Sematary 2 and Miracle Mile. None of these carried Star Trek's visibility or cultural impact, but all demanded far more range and versatility than simply standing at a tactical console ever had. The difference was control. Every role was chosen, not endured. Every risk belonged to her, not a writer's room that didn't know how to use her talent. Years later, at 67, Denise reflected on this period and was clear about what it gave her. Even through uncertainty and financial instability, it forced growth. It sharpened her instincts. It pushed her into work that demanded range, commitment, and creativity, instead of patience and silence. Money was inconsistent. Visibility was lower than Star Trek offered, but the work felt real in a way her final months on the show never had. Then doubt crept in, slowly at first, then impossible to ignore. As seasons passed, the show she left behind transformed completely. By season 3, with new creative leadership after Gene Roddenberry stepped back from day-to-day production, the writing became deeper. Characters once underused suddenly became complex, emotional, and central to compelling storylines. The show was finally delivering on its promise, becoming the cultural phenomenon everyone believed it could be. This transformation didn't happen by accident. Maurice Hurley, who had overseen much of Season 1's trouble writing, left after Season 2. Michael Piller took over as showrunner in Season 3, and the show fundamentally changed. Early struggles, including losing Denise, forced Star Trek to evolve. Watching from the outside, Denise couldn't ignore the shift happening right before her eyes. The type of character-driven storytelling she had longed for, the depth she had begged for, was finally happening. But just without her, the question was unavoidable and painful. Had she left too soon? If she had stayed a little longer? Endured a bit more frustration? Would Tasha Yar have become the character she was promised in that audition room? Would the writers have eventually figured out how to give her the depth and complexity they now brought to other characters? That question lingered in her mind during quiet moments. But just as that doubt began turning into something close to regret, a casual conversation at a Star Trek convention opened a door she thought had been permanently closed. And what came next gave her everything she'd been denied. The episode that finally told the truth. When Denise Crosby casually mentioned at a convention that she might return to Star Trek if the opportunity was right, she had no idea that single sentence would lead to one of the franchise's most celebrated episodes, and finally give her everything she had been hungry for back in Season 1. Denise didn't plan a comeback or orchestrate her return. It happened because of one passing comment, years after she thought Star Trek was done with her, and she was done with it. During that casual conversation with writer Eric Stillwell, Denise said she would consider returning, but only if the role truly mattered. No long contracts, no standing at a console, delivering technical lines. Just one story that did justice to Tasha Yar and gave the character the send-off she deserved. That comment stuck. Stillwell brought it back to the writer's room, where he and Trent Ganino searched for a way to undo the past without erasing it. What they came up with was Yesterday's Enterprise, an alternate timeline story in Season 3. Just as the show finally found its voice, the episode would become one of the most celebrated in TNG's 7-season run, consistently topping fan polls decades later. In this story, a battered Enterprise is pulled into a darker reality where the Federation is losing a brutal war. And in that timeline, Tasha Yar is alive. But this Tasha is not the eager officer from Season 1. She's exhausted, hardened by years of non-stop conflict, carrying the weight of friends she has watched die. Denise finally had room to explore her character's strength, fear, and moral resolve. She forms a brief but devastating connection with Lieutenant Richard Castillo. In just 3 scenes, They create a romance more emotionally resonant than anything Tasha had experienced in an entire season. Before Guinan reveals the truth, she is not supposed to exist. The choice that follows changes everything. Knowing returning to the past would likely kill her, Tasha volunteers anyway, because fixing history matters more than her own survival. This time, her death is neither random nor meaningless. For Denise, the irony was sharp. In a 2024 interview, she joked that she had to die to finally get a good script. As a guest star, she received the depth she never had as a regular. The performance was widely praised, and fans embraced it as a farewell Tasha Yar always deserved. But Star Trek wasn't finished with Denise Crosby yet. What they asked her play next would be darker, more twisted, and even more satisfying than anything Tasha Yar could have ever been. The tragedy. The Tasha who traveled back with the Enterprise C didn't die immediately. Instead, the Romulans captured her, and what they did to her gave birth to Star Trek's most personal villain. She was imprisoned, manipulated, and forced into a relationship with a Romulan officer. Later, she tried to escape with her child, but she was executed. Her daughter survived. That daughter was Sela, raised inside the Romulan Empire, stripped of her human past, and conditioned to see weakness as a liability. Sela grew up angry, ambitious, and ruthless. She had Tasha Yar's face, but rejected everything her mother had stood for. Sela made a lasting impact during the redemption arc, manipulating the Dura sisters and pushing the Klingon Empire towards civil war. She wasn't loud or reckless. She planned carefully, exploited weaknesses, and stayed 3 steps ahead of everyone. Later, in Unification, she escalated her actions, orchestrating a covert invasion of Vulcan and confronting Picard in cold, calculated encounters that felt more like chess matches and interrogations. For Denise, the brilliance of Sela's character is that she isn't a cartoon villain, constantly proving herself in a society that saw her as tainted by human blood. That pressure sharpened her cruelty. Every decision she made revolved around dominance, survival, and control, but glimpses of her humanity still slipped through, making her even more dangerous. Denise later admitted that leaving the show made this possible. Had she stayed, she might have been frozen in place. Walking away forced growth, and Sela became proof of that. Not a footnote, not a regret. A fully realized antagonist who expanded the Star Trek universe in ways Tasha never could. Playing Sela showed that leaving had been worth every risk. But there was still one final return waiting years later, and stepping back into Tasha Yar's uniform one last time would teach Denise lessons about growth, change, and letting go she never expected. A Ghost on the Bridge, Denise's final return. Years later, Denise returned one final time for series finale, All Good Things. Q sent Picard jumping through time, including back to pilot, and there she was, young Lieutenant Tasha Yar at Tactical. For Denise, recreating a performance from 7 years earlier, after growing so much as an actress, felt like putting on clothes she had long outgrown. She studied old episodes carefully, dissecting every gesture, but her growth inevitably showed through. That brief appearance became her true goodbye to the character. But when Star Trek called the cast back together for Picard Season 3 in 2023, with Data resurrected and even minor characters returning, Denise Crosby was absent, and that absence tells a story of its own. The truth at 67. When Star Trek, Picard brought back the entire Next Generation cast for its 3rd season in 2023, fans rejoiced. Data was resurrected twice, Worf returned in full glory, and even minor characters got their moments in spotlight. But Denise Crosby was nowhere to be seen, and the silence around her absence tells a story deeper than most realize. Tasha Yar stayed in the past, while her castmates stepped boldly into the future. Denise has addressed this absence at recent conventions, admitting that conversations about her return happened, but never progressed beyond early stages. Whether that was due to creative challenges of bringing back a character who died in Season 1, or simply because the story didn't need her, she hasn't shared the full details publicly, but she has spoken about it without bitterness or resentment. Now at 67, Denise looks back at leaving Star Trek, the Next Generation, with full clarity. In interviews from 2023 and 2024, she's made it clear that her story isn't just about having no regrets. It's about understanding how the entertainment industry, especially for women, often forces impossible choices. security versus self-respect, comfort versus creative fulfillment, being seen versus being truly valued. Denise respected herself too much to become decoration on someone else's show. She trusted her instincts too deeply to accept scraps when she deserved substance. And she had the courage to walk away, even when every logical voice in Hollywood screamed at her to stay. That choice could have ended her career, but instead, it redefined it. What might have seemed like a footnote became a lasting legacy, proving that sometimes the bravest thing an actor can do is leave. The audition scene that promised everything never made it to air, but the woman who performed it secured her place in Star Trek history, not by standing silently at a tactical station, but by speaking up, walking out, and returning on her own terms, stronger and more compelling than the franchise ever allowed her to be in the first place. Denise Crosby didn't lose Star Trek when she left. Star Trek lost Denise Crosby, and decades later, her absence in Picard proves they still haven't figured out what to do with a woman who recognized her own worth before anyone else did. Do you think Denise Crosby made the right decision in leaving when she did, or should she have stayed to see if Tasha Yar would eventually get the material she deserved? And here's the bigger question. If you were in her shoes, drawing a paycheck on a hit show but creatively suffocating, would you have the courage to walk away? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the untold stories behind Hollywood's biggest decisions. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.